Hi Year 10, it's Miss Rowe and I'm just going over Globalisation from Friday's lesson for those that have missed it. Okay, so we went through the interest, which was the retrieval grid sheet. If you weren't in lesson and you'd like a copy of that, just let me know. But let's start. So what is globalisation? So I like to think of globalisation as the world being more connected. So businesses working around the world, but like most things in business, it has its pros and cons. I've used McDonald's as an example on here because obviously you might have seen them in London, Manchester, but then you might have seen them in America or Australia. So they are a global business. You'll see them all over the world. Someone gave an example in lesson of Five Guys, and they said, oh, they had a Five Guys in New York. Yeah, well, there's one in the Trafford Centre as well, and I had one in London. So it shows that they are opening up all over the world. So the good thing about globalisation is it means there's a much larger market. So UK businesses have more options of people to trade with. It's not just in the hometown or even this country. It can be EU, America, wherever you wish. So there is a few options and there's a few issues with that as well, which we'll go over anyway in the next few slides. But for example, competition, that's a bit of an issue with some businesses. We all know that McDonald's are quite reputable. But if you think of someone new you might see on Dragon's Den, for example, or some of the ideas you might see on The Apprentice, you have to be a business that stands out. Otherwise, how is it going to work globally? Because obviously there's not just one company that might be designing the same products or using the same processes. So you really need to be able to show that you stand out as a business for it to work. Otherwise, there's a lot of competition out there. So globalisation, like I said, means the world is more interconnected. It's great globally, and there's a larger market that you can work with, like we said. So there is quite a few pros and cons, again, that we're going to go over now. So obviously, when you think of the larger market, it obviously leads to increased sales and higher profits, which is fantastic for a business. Also, having the larger market to buy from means firms are able to buy supplies more cheaply, which obviously reduces costs for the business and ends up leading to higher profits potentially. So it is easy for UK businesses to set up factories in different countries, so it makes it a bit easier for that. So we saw some factories in India on YouTube the other day. Obviously that also is a drawback as well, which we'll talk about in another slide. So one of the good things again is some companies purposefully set up factories in certain countries where labour is cheap because it keeps costs down and it increases the profits. But obviously as well, in certain companies, they don't have to pay import taxes in the countries where they have factories. So that is a big thing for, businesses in the UK. So as we can see here, pros of globalisation. So you might want to make notes in your books if you've missed this. I've tried to underline the key words or key phrases. So a larger market to sell to equals increased sales and higher profit. It's easier for UK businesses to set up factories in other countries. So that helps reduce transport costs, which there, obviously, if you think of being in Blackpool or Bolton, you see Home Bargains trucks, you see Asda trucks, you see so many trucks delivering wholesale goods. So obviously it might cut that down depending on where they're based. You definitely have to think of location sometimes. Means companies don't have to pay import taxes, which I've just mentioned. Companies purposefully set up factories in countries where labour is cheap to keep costs down, so it'll increase profits. And these here, it shows that some of the raw materials, so you might want to be based around places like this, like, for example, drinking water. You see drinking water that might say, oh, it's come from the Alps. Well, it makes more sense being near the Alps and have a factory near the Alps if you're bottling water. Or if you're making furniture, you might want to be near forests, etc. So let's talk about some of the drawbacks. So drawbacks: higher wages in the UK. By the way, if you notice some things are spelt wrong, it's because my laptop, the I key doesn't work, so bear with me. But also tell me in lesson if you spot that. Right, so we sew your clothes, make our factories safe. This is something we watched the other day. Very, very sad. So there was a fire in a clothes factory in Bangladesh. Killed 117 people and injured, I think, 200, I think we said. So, because the fire safety just wasn't good enough, the emergency exits weren't, there weren't enough of them. So I think, obviously, you've got to think, if your business, you have a factory in one of these countries, and then it sets on fire or whatever, there's an issue with it, then obviously your business will go under scrutiny for this. So you have to really think you need to improve working conditions, which might not be a thing in that country. You might not have to really think about it. So you're thinking you're paying them very little to make the clothes. They're in little buildings like this. All together, as we saw on that video on YouTube. But you've got to think, in the UK, you would have to have very good health and safety. So, and also workers' rights, for example. There's a lot of things you've got to cover which might not be there in other countries. So exchange rates, they change constantly, so it can be a drawback depending on where you're based and who you're selling to. So you've got to think, when it comes to globalisation, it is a larger market, which is great, but there's a lot more competition. So it's been around for a long time. I think the spice trade is quite an early example of one of the first ones, but obviously in the last century, technology means globalisation has become an important factor for businesses, because now we can use the internet and we can globally buy things anywhere. So that is globalisation. We will have part 2 on Monday. I'll try and upload it as quick as I can. Okay, see you in lesson, guys.